Hey Wargamers, I'm looking today at some Warlord boxes we've got from our local model store. These are Italeri Warlord models, and we're not, they are 1 to 56, so obviously can be used with bolt action. We are looking quite heavily into bolt action at the minute, and with them not being too expensive, we thought this was an excellent time to really look inside the box, decide if these models were for us or not, and if we want to get more involved in bolt action. At a recent Wellington Wargaming event, there was an increased bolt action presence, and we're aware of a lot of wargamers who are now switching from Warhammer 40,000 to bolt action. It seems to be, this is like the new Flames of War almost. I can't blame them. I do like 28mm over the scale that's used for Flames of War. We can reuse much of the scenery, so let's check it out. Now, what I quite liked about this, I have already kind of taken a look at it in the shop with the guy. Basically, the modelling guy was saying, look, we're getting a couple of these in because we think it'll appeal to some of our model enthusiasts, but it will also appeal to wargamers. And in actual fact, if you look here, it says hard plastic vehicle for gamer and collector. So it's designed for both. I'm going to tear the impenetrable plastic that comes, these things always seem to come in. So it's quite nice bit of kit. It's having assembled like 176 models, which is never seems to be that fun, especially when you have lots of things. I mean, you look here, that's the bottom, that's the top. Put the two things together, you're essentially there. It's got a plastic rather than a rubber tracks, which I quite like because I always find putting together the rubber tracks can be a bit of a nightmare. There's almost always some screaming and some cursing as I'm trying to get the two things to fit. Likewise, look at this. You have to be a modeler to really appreciate what you're looking at here, but these ones where you have to insert every single wheel kind of is enough to drive you slightly nuts. So I kind of like the fact that it'll be very quick to assemble. I'm going to probably paint the sprue as I go along, and in actual fact I'm half thinking of using these with my Space Dwarves, if you've seen them, because I just like this. I like the Stug. You know, I've already got a Stug somewhere. Where have I got my Stug? My Atomic Stug. My call. So I'm trying to look desperately here. I should have a Stug somewhere. Maybe I'm going to start crying in a minute if I can't find it. Hey, you got my Stug! This is a 1 to 35 Stug that you might have seen. So this is obviously going to be a lot bigger. So this one's going to probably be about that size. But yeah, this again, rubber things. Every one of those wheels had to be inserted on. It was a bit of a nightmare. So the idea of doing one that's going to be a little simpler to assemble is good. At the minute, I'm wondering, do I want to assemble this as if it's a World War II one, or do I want to use my usual trick where I kind of insert some kind of space weapon about here and turn it into like more of a spacey thing? Don't know. I'm certainly not going to be collecting Germans because I generally don't. Now this is a oh, you've got to love the tanks. You just got to love the tanks. This is the World War II infantry set. In actual fact, we're thinking more of focusing on Marines, but in general, they probably, for this scale, will probably pass off as Marines anyway. Because we really want to, because New Zealand is in the Pacific, and generally we feel kind of like Second World War Pacific tends to get overlooked, although it's quite an interesting period, and was of course had as bloody a history as any battlefield in Europe. So might need to open this at the side. some extra glue with this. Let's just go and open this. Ooh. So you get a little Vallejo khaki colour, which is pretty cool, and a little glue bottle, which is quite useful, and a brush. As you can imagine, being a wargamer, I have these things, but it's still nice occasionally. So let's look at the screws themselves. Ooh. Yeah, this prominently says it is bolt action. Why doesn't it say on the box? This is for use with bolt action. Yeah, you can see the contents here. This makes 10. I want to call them guardsmen, Marines or US Infantry models. Again, nice kind of plastic. And you get 2 sprues with you can see how the figures look. Choice of different heads, equipment, some quite nice bases. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble these up and bring some samples, and we'll continue from there. Okay, so here we go. Well, as I kind of predicted, this was a real doddle to assemble. A lot of fun. I kind of pre-painted it on the sprues and then assembled it. Stug looking nicely. Now the figures I kind of like, but there's something about them that doesn't quite work. They were a bit of a pain to assemble because they've got these tiny rifles, which of course are perfectly to scale, and they all have to kind of manipulating it together to look to glue the arms and hands together to the weapon. It was a wee bit fiddly. They just kind of look a little like toy figures to me. There's not the level of detailing that I typically see and associate with wargaming figures. And just, although they're 28mm, if you put them next to that's a Warhammer 40,000 figure, which is kind of 28mm heroic, and this guy I know is crouching, but it's size-wise he's a little bit smaller, but also it just doesn't have that kind of same-ish level of detail. I'm going to bring it closer to the light source so that you can see better. Should be able to see better. There we go. And yes, it is. It's almost like I'm painting one of those the army men's that you get in the sprues. You know, like the Toy Story type army men. They're good. They're fun. They're definitely cheap enough, but it would just have been nice to see a little bit more, I guess, detail on them, I suppose. When you see the Games Workshop figure next to it, it doesn't quite look quite as good. Likewise, it's difficult because this is a Sherman that I've adapted for Warhammer, and that's a 48, and this is a 56 Stug, 1/56 Stug, and it is like the Sherman had, which was a proper model kit, had more detailing on it, but then this is easy to put together. And I've got a Stug, and these are surprisingly actually quite small. Actually, and we've checked the dimensions, and they really weren't that giant a tank really. One of the reasons why they were actually quite effective because they had quite a low profile compared to some of the other tanks that were much bigger. Anyway, overall, I love the tank. Undecided about the figures, I think, overall. But I'll assemble the rest and see how it goes. It's me signing off.